I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body created by the City of Iowa City according to state statutes. Oh, I'm sorry. This is my first time as chair. Roll call, please.
Baker.
Here.
Swigert.
Here.
Tallman.
Here.
Russo.
Yes.
Vandergast.
Here.
Okay. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body created by the City of Iowa City according to state statutes. The board's purpose is to decide on applications for variances from the zoning ordinance, appeals of decisions of city officials, and applications for special exceptions requested under the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustment is an independent volunteer board made up of Iowa City residents and is not part of the city administration. We are assisted in our work by the city attorney's office and by planning staff. Prior to this meeting, board members received the materials submitted by the applicant, the staff report reviewing the application, and any correspondence submitted by members of the public. Board members have not discussed the application or its merits with each other, staff, the applicant, or any other member of the public in advance of this meeting. All consideration and discussion by the board takes place in an open meeting here tonight, where we also have an opportunity to hear from the public. The board bases its decisions on facts and evidence allowed by city code presented in open meeting. Concise and truthful testimony helps us a great deal in our decision-making. We ask that if you wish to speak, that you come to the podium, print your full name and address on the sign-in sheet, and speak clearly into the microphone so your testimony can be heard by all present and by our minute taker as all testimony becomes part of the public record. We ask that the proceedings be orderly and that when you are testifying, you address your remarks to the board. If this hearing becomes lengthy, we may ask that testimony be focused on new facts or on information not already provided. The order of proceedings for each application will be: 1, an oral report by staff summarizing the issues of the case and staff's recommendations. 2, an opportunity for the applicant to speak. 3, an opportunity for any other interested parties to speak for or against the application. 4, an opportunity for final statements and arguments by the applicant and staff. And finally, the board will discuss the issues and evidence, state its findings, and vote on a motion. Motions are always made in the affirmative. Tonight we're here to consider case EXC 26-0001, an application requesting a special exception for a religious private group assembly use in an interim development single-family residential zone for the property at 1645 North Scott Boulevard. And I open the public hearing.
Hi, my name is Lisa Schroer, and I'm a planner in Neighborhood and Development Services. Here's an aerial image of the property where 1645 North Scott Boulevard is located. It's outlined in the white dashed line, and the property is primarily made up of woodlands. There's also some prairie, fields, and pastures, and also walking paths for visitors. The property is zoned interim development single-family residential, which I'll refer to as IDRS for shorthand. North of the property is zoned interim development research park. East of the property is zoned IDRS. South of the property is zoned low-density single-family residential with a planned development overlay. And west of the property is zoned low-density single-family residential. The Harvest Preserve Foundation was established in 2005 as a nonprofit corporation. The preserve is dedicated to maintaining and preserving natural areas while also increasing public awareness, appreciation, and participation. The preserve maintains approximately 100 acres of land, a portion of which has been placed with a conservation easement to achieve their mission. The primary use of this land is parks and open space. The conservation easement outlines buildable areas that are suitable for construction of allowed development. And the applicant is now seeking to construct a meeting space that provides members with opportunities for education and shelter. And this use is classified as a private group assembly. In August of 2024, the applicant previously requested approval of a special exception for a private group assembly use. Prior to that Board of Adjustment meeting, a Good Neighbor meeting was held in May of 2024. And the applicant, following that meeting, addressed neighbor concerns in the site plan by moving the location of the proposed building from the northwest corner of the property to the northeast corner. The current application, EXC 26-0001, is a renewal of this previously approved special exception, and the 6-month validity period of the original decision has passed, so now the applicant is reapplying with a similar site plan. Here's a closer look at the site plan where the proposed building is. The proposed building is in that salmon-colored box and is approximately 3,144 square feet. This proposed building is located in the northeastern corner of the property, next to existing buildings and an existing driveway. And the proposed building also falls within the buildable area, which is shown on this site plan in the kind of diagonal gray line. Here's a look at the floor plan for the main level. This is intended to be a meeting space with also providing restrooms and storage area, as well as the screened porch. Here's a look at the lower level of the plan. The building is proposed a walkout basement, which will be storage area as well. The role of the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment is charged with approving with conditions, or denying the application based on the facts presented. To approve the special exception, the board must find that it meets all applicable approval criteria. For this, we use two. We have specific standards pertaining to the use requested, and then we also have general standards that we use for all special exceptions. So for our specific standards, we'll use 4B4D17 of the code, and this is for a religious or private group assembly in the IDRS zone. The first standard is related to the required setbacks. So the following setbacks are required in lieu of the setbacks specified in the base zone. So the proposed building must be set back 20 feet from the front lot line, 20 feet from the side, and rear 50 feet from the rear lot line. However, the board may reduce these setbacks subject to the approval criteria for setback adjustments as specified in subsection 14.2a.4b, which is our adjustments to principal building setback requirement subsection of this title. The proposed building is set back 138 feet from the front lot line, 723 feet from the side lot line, and over 2,800 feet from the rear lot line. So the applicant proposes to exceed the minimum setback requirements. The next standard, so the proposed use will be designed to be compatible with adjacent uses. The Board of Adjustment will consider aspects of the proposed use, such as the site size, types of accessory uses, anticipated traffic, building scale, setbacks, landscaping, and the location and amount of paved areas. The board may deny the use or aspects of the use that are deemed out of scale, incompatible, or out of character with surrounding residential uses, or may require additional measures to mitigate these differences. Additional requirements may include, but are not limited to, additional screening, landscaping, pedestrian facilities, setbacks, location and design of parking facilities, and the location and design of buildings. Staff find that the use would provide an indoor meeting space and restrooms for its members for the purpose of education, training, leisure, and shelter. This private group assembly use is primarily for use by its members, typically restricts access to the general public, and cannot be rented to commercial office uses or for events held by the general public. The proposed building is designed to be compatible with adjacent uses. The structure is 3,144 square feet and is 1 story with a walkout basement. The nearest residential use is 2 stories with a footprint of 2,242 square feet and a total floor area of approximately 4,400 square feet. We also consulted with transportation staff who determined that the proposed use and associated traffic will not overburden Scott Boulevard, noting that the street currently carries, according to Iowa state data, the street currently carries approximately 5,100 vehicles per day and has the capacity to exceed 15,000 vehicles per day. Transportation staff also found that the use and the existing parking spaces will not generate enough traffic to warrant further improvements to Scott Boulevard, such as turn lanes or traffic study. And finally, the existing driveway is set to remain, meets the code requirement of 150 feet spacing on an arterial from an adjacent street. And then lastly, the occupant load of the meeting space in the building, which is used to determine the minimum off-street parking requirement, indicates an occupancy of 147 people, which requires 25 parking spaces. The next standard, given that large parking lots can seriously erode the single-family residential character of these zones, the board will carefully review any parking spaces beyond the minimum required. The board may limit the number of parking spaces and the size and location of parking lots, taking into account the availability of on-street parking, the estimated parking demand, and opportunities for shared parking with other non-residential uses in the vicinity of the use. The proposed use requires a minimum of 25 parking spaces. Parking spaces for a religious or private group assembly use is determined by the largest room's occupancy, which is 147 people. The property contains 2 existing paved areas that are capable of being striped for the required 25 parking spaces. And the additional driveway located along the northeast side of the property will be used. No improvements to the drive are proposed as part of this application. Bike parking will also need to be provided and reviewed during the site plan review. And there is no on-street parking available along North Scott Boulevard. The nearest on-street parking would be along Tamarack Trail, which has a 26-foot pavement width and supports on-street parking along one side of the street. The next standard, the proposed use will not have significant adverse effects on the livability of nearby residential uses due to noise, glare from lights, late night operations, odors, and litter. The closest residential property from the proposed use is located 723 feet to the west and separated by woodlands. To ensure the use does not produce negative impacts relating to noise or late night operations, staff is recommending a condition that the building housing the private group assembly use be closed from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and that amplified sound not be allowed outside. Single-family and IDRS zones are in the low illumination district, which is the lowest lighting district within our code. However, the IDRS zone properties are not subject to the same lighting restrictions as single-family uses, and due to the proximity to existing single-family uses and the specific approval criteria that the use be designed to be compatible with adjacent uses. Staff is recommending the condition that any future lighting be subject to the standards of 14G5G3, which is our standards for single-family and two-family uses to ensure compatible lighting designs. The next standard is related to building additions and accessory structures. The building official may grant approval for the following modifications to a private group assembly use without approval from the Board of Adjustment. This section is not applicable because the proposed use is new and a special exception is required. The final standard here is if the proposed use is located in a residential zone or in the central planning district, it must comply with the multifamily site development standards as set forth in section 14.2b6 of this title. We find that the proposed use is located within an interim development zone, which is outside of the central planning district and not subject to the multifamily site development standards. That brings us to our general standards that we use for all special exceptions. First, the board must find that the specific proposed exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. Staff find that the proposed building will generally be of a comparable scale to surrounding residential uses, and the applicant proposes an increased setback to maintain separation from existing development. The proposed use is classified as a private group assembly, so it primarily is intended for use by its members. It typically restricts access to the general public, and it cannot be rented out for commercial uses or for events held by the general public. Transportation staff also determined that traffic generated by the proposed use will not overburden existing streets, and access to the surrounding properties will not be affected. Staff also find that the proposed building would provide an amenity to enhance the visiting experience for members, programs, and camps, while also acting as a safety shelter when necessary. Conditions for noise and lighting have been proposed to ensure the proposed use remains compatible with surrounding developments so as not to impede on the health, safety, comfort, or welfare of the public. Next standard, the specific proposed exception will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity and will not substantially diminish or impair property values in the neighborhood. Our findings, the proposed use will not impact the ability of neighbors to utilize and enjoy their properties. The proposed building is located approximately 723 feet from the nearest residential property line to the west. The proposed development is also within the area that allows development activity per the existing conservation easement agreement. The majority of the property will remain open space, which serves as an amenity and benefit to neighboring properties, which can have positive impacts on property values. Staff also find the proposed development is located in an area on the northeastern portion of the subject property that contains other structures for Harvest Preserve member use and that do not have city-imposed limitations. Conditions, as recommended, will help mitigate potential negative effects on noise and hours of operation for surrounding properties. So the next standard, establishment of the specific proposed exception will not impede the natural and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district in which such property is located. The residential neighborhood to the west is nearly fully developed with residential uses. Land to the north and east of the subject property remains undeveloped. The development of this land will occur as utilities are extended and development continues from the west. The proposed use will also be set back 723 feet from the existing residential neighborhood and be compatible in scale. The conditions, as recommended, mitigate potential effects for surrounding properties. So the next criteria, the board must find that adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or are being provided. The subject property has access to city utilities and will extend utilities to the property to serve the new building. There's also an 8-foot wide sidewalk existing along the property's North Scott Boulevard frontage, and there is also pedestrian access for visitors of Harvest Preserve through on-site trails. And then lastly, a large portion of the subject property is green space, which allows for the absorption of stormwater runoff. The next standard, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress or egress designed to minimize traffic congestion on public streets. Direct access to the new development will be off North Scott Boulevard and use the existing curb cut and driveway. Transportation staff also determined that the existing drive was acceptable and the use, as well as the existing parking, would not overburden existing streets or require improvements. The next criteria, except for the specific regulations and standards applicable to the exception being considered, the specific proposed exception in all other respects conforms to the applicable regulations or standards of the zone in which it is to be located. The proposed use and development meet all applicable code standards of the IDRS zone. And that brings us to our last standard. The proposed exception will be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city as amended. Starting with the future land use map, the comprehensive plan shows this area as conservation design. And we also look to the Northeast District Plan, which identifies this property as the Bluffwood neighborhood. On page 27 of the comprehensive plan, it notes that conservation design is appropriate in areas containing sensitive features and is meant to balance the protection of sensitive natural features with the development rights of property owners. By clustering development on more buildable portions of the property, natural areas can be preserved. The proposed use and building would be located in the northeast corner of the property, away from sensitive areas and in a designated buildable area per the conservation easement. Moving on to the Northeast District Plan, page 8 states a goal to use conservation design principles to locate streets, utilities, and structures in a way that minimizes disturbance to natural features. Although the street network is currently built out, in recent years, city utilities have been extended to a location that is more suitable to limit disturbance to natural features while preserving the property with proper utilities, providing the property with proper utilities. And then lastly, page 8 of the North District Plan also has the goal to treat environmentally sensitive areas as amenities. The Harvest Preserve Foundation has placed a portion of its 100 acres into a private conservation easement for the long-term protection of natural features with the intent of raising public awareness, appreciation, and participation. The proposed use and the building would provide an indoor space intended to further support and enhance the nature amenities and those who visit. Staff received 2 pieces of correspondence following publication of the agenda packet. Both of these were in opposition, and there are hard copies available. That brings us to our staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval of EXC 26-001 to allow a private group assembly use in an interim development single-family residential zone for the property located at 1645 North Scott Boulevard, subject to the following conditions. First, general compliant with the site plan dated April 8th, 2026 in terms of the location of the building, parking, and the size and scale of the proposed building. Second, the building must be closed between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Third, no amplified sound shall be allowed outdoors. And then last, future lighting be subject to the standards of 14.5G3, which are our standards for single-family and two-family uses to ensure compatible lighting designs. And that concludes the presentation. I'll turn it back over to the board.
Are there any questions from the board to city staff?
Are the grounds open beyond 10 p.m.? Or how does that work?
You know, that might be a good question for the applicant to answer, but their website generally says dawn to dusk.
I see.
Yeah.
And this came before us in 2024 and was approved. Is there anything in this application that is factually different than what we already approved?
The conditions we're recommending are the same as the conditions we recommended last time, the conditions that the board agreed with. The only thing that's changed is the design of the building slightly.
Okay, but the exterior design or,
The exterior, yeah.
but the size of the building is the same or comparable to the?
The size is comparable, it's slightly larger.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question about the parking spaces. The plan shows 4 spaces separated from the 21 spaces. Is there a building connected to those 4 separate spaces?
Site plan.
There is a building there. I can
Is
pull it
it
up.
something that requires its own parking spaces?
That is, I think, an accessory structure to the open space use. I think it's a barn that was relocated to that site, and the applicant can probably speak to that as well.
It looks like another change was the location of the building from 2024. It was moved. Is that right?
The original application, that staff received in 2024 had the building over on the west side somewhere. And through the Good Neighbor meeting and feedback that we got from the residents, the applicant ended up moving the building over to the east side. So when it was approved by the board, it was in this location on the east side.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, I will now ask the applicant to present your proposal.
Hi, my name is Brock Heller with MMS Consultants. I'm the applicant on behalf of Harvest Preserve. Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation, and thanks for your time, board. Some of the questions that were just brought up, I can address. As far as the hours of operation, there potentially could be overnight camps at certain times in the summer. That's the only main thing that I can think of as far as those hours being different. And then with staff's recommendation of the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. closure, the Harvest Preserve would be accepting of that as well. There is a restroom that will have access from the outside that it's not internal to the building. So members will be able to access that restroom facility without the building itself being opened. It's my understanding that the building isn't intended to be open at all times, and that the Harvest Preserve board would only open it for certain occasions. In terms of the parking spaces, there, as you mentioned, there are some additional paved areas that are separate from the first lot when you come in. Those are in front of that storage shed that was mentioned. And part of the proposal for this use is to kind of allow for that existing shed doesn't really meet the hopes for what the Harvest Preserve members would like this building to meet. So that's part of why they would like this special exception, is to be able to have an indoor facility that has or sanitary service and water, and there's existing well and a septic system to that shed, but this would be a more reliable all year round access to those utilities. And as far as the location of the building, it was initially shown in this location, and then during the application received a comment from city staff about connecting to the public utilities. And so for that reason, we visited the idea of placing the building in the northwest corner of the lot because it was closer to the existing sanitary along Tamarack Trail. That was what was presented to the neighbors at the Good Neighbor meeting, and due to the pushback from that is when the building got relocated back to where it originally was. So that's all I have, and if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
If there's a camping event, where does that occur?
There is a yurt that's on kind of the center west side of the lot that could be used, and then there's also the open lawn areas for tents to be placed.
Can you be a little more specific about where tents would be placed? Can you kind of show us?
I don't actually know exactly where the tents would be, but if there are certain limitations to the locations of those, I could definitely share those with the owners.
Currently, is there camping out there?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Taproot uses this grounds as a summer camp that there's different age groups, but the 12 to 18 age group has an overnight summer camp. I don't know that they spend every night there. It's a week-long camp, so there might be times that they're not camping at this facility.
So to clarify then, will this new building be put on the city sanitary sewer or use the existing septic system?
Yes, it will be placed on the city sewer. There's a pending site plan that we've started working on that we have looked at with staff, and we would propose extending gravity flow sanitary east on Scott Boulevard until it hits the northwest corner of the property. And then due to the two levels of the building and being lower in elevation, there would be a force main that would pump that up to the gravity sewer.
Is the same true also for the existing well, or be city water?
Yes, it would be city water. There'd be around 900 feet of water main extended on the north side of Scott Boulevard, and the spacing of hydrants as the fire department would request. And then it would dead end with a hydrant and then have a service tapped off of that. So
I just want to make sure I understand this. You already have a history of overnight camping events.
that's my understanding, yes.
Is that the same thing as a yes? I mean, it's your understanding. And do you know that they have already overnight camping events? I mean,
I don't personally know, but it's my understanding that Harvest Preserve and Taproot have hosted overnight camps.
okay.
I don't
Perhaps there's
personally
somebody
know
else in
that.
the audience maybe that can answer that question, because without you knowing for sure, then I want to know about what activities were involved and if there have been any problems with those overnight camping events. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is, when I'm listening to you, I'm not sure I hear that when we say the building's going to be closed at 10 p.m., that means literally it will not be accessible to anybody outside? If somebody's camping, they cannot get in or use the building facilities.
They would have access just to the exterior restroom door, but
Exterior
not
restroom.
to the interior of the building. Unless there might be a camp counselor that could have access to the building, not during those hours. But as far as the use being for assembly, there would not be any assembly use taking part after 10
Just the
p.m. to
restroom
6 a.m.
facilities.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then campers would have access to the building overnight for emergency shelter purposes.
Yeah. If there was strong winds or hail or who knows, anything that we've got in the last week.
I'm sorry if I missed this during a presentation, but can you clarify what that shape is southeast of the proposed building? Yes, that.
Yes, there's an existing patio that's there. The previous application was being proposed on top of that, so that might be why it looks new from the previous application. So the building is shifted slightly northwest of that existing patio.
Thank you.
Would I be correct in saying that the camping issue is really not in front of us tonight? Noise is, but there's the nexus between the structure and camping is not really under review right now, is it?
Well, no, except that with these improved bathroom facilities, it might make camping more of an event, more often, greater numbers of people. That's where I was going with that. And I want to get some clarification of what the history has been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who to address this to, does zoning limit the number of campers, or what limits the number of campers out there?
It's a open, parks and open space use. I don't see any issues with camping in an open space use. And to my knowledge, there's no zoning requirement that says only so many people can camp on the site at a certain time.
And that barn structure already had restrooms for use for the campers.
Yeah, there was a septic attached to that building, and it's still operable, but it's not as reliable during colder months. So.
There's a reference in one of the letters of correspondence regarding another road that was permitted in February. Is that pertinent here?
Which piece of correspondence?
Hang on. I'm sorry, it says, quote, "It does not mention the outbuilding permit dated 2/24/26 to be built on the northwest corner." It's not a road,
We have a building permit application from Harvest Preserve for construction of a shed.
And it says here now their chip seal road built with the impression it was to be used for the handicap mobility challenge members for accessibility. So I'm assuming that is the road right about where your dot is now.
And then just to clarify, that is not a road or a street, it's a private drive.
Yeah. And it's not serving this new proposed building.
No.
Yeah.
It was gravel previously. It's been there since before the subdivision was in, and then it's been improved to chip seal since, partially for mobility, but also to prevent as much dust and things from kicking up.
This is more of a question for staff. Is that okay if I go? Is chip seal allowed?
Is what allowed?
Chip seal.
Chip seal for gravel wouldn't have technically been allowed either, but it was existing. I don't know the history of the drive changing from gravel to chip seal. Typically for parking areas and stuff, we want it to be concrete.
Any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone here from Harvest Preserve that could answer questions about the camping, even though, I mean, that's really not relevant. Although it was brought up in one of the letters of correspondence. Larry, would you, if there is anybody here that could,
Oh, if there's anybody here, sure.
okay. Doesn't look like there is.
No.
All right. Okay, opening for public comment. Thank you. And I'd like to ask first anyone who's here in favor of the application to come forward.
I'm not opposed.
Well, let's go ahead and take your comment. Please provide your name and address and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
So my name's Ken Strayer, and I'm the current president of the HOA. And I'm speaking for myself, and I've also, there's 3 members on the board, and we've discussed the issue. There's neighbors that I'm not speaking for them. You might hear from them in a little bit. So first of all, I mean, the packet I thought was great. I mean, it gave me a lot of information. Would have been nice, it would be nice, and I don't know how the process works, but there were a lot of, as soon as the sign goes up on the street that says, oh, you know, you're asking for a special exception, you know, there's all kinds of questions. And the packet answered, like, for me, was great and answered a lot of questions. It would have been nice to have that ahead of time. So the things that I've heard that to me seem the most relevant was, one is the road that you guys were just both talking about, that's gravel, is to make sure that it's not used any more than it currently is because of this. There was some concern that with the new facility that people might try to drive on that road and park on that road and then walk over to the building. And so because all it is it's a road that's directly next to a chain link fence, and the neighbors' yards are right on the other side of the chain link fence. So if there was a lot of additional traffic on there, if people were parking their cars on there, that's going to adversely affect those people along that road. So, you know, it'd be nice to get assurance that they're not going to use that road any more than they do right now because of this new building. That was one thing. The second thing, which is not exactly, it doesn't have anything to do specifically with this application, but I know that they're talking about another building. I'm not sure if it's in that square, the big square, if that's where they're talking about the new building. But I'm definitely getting feedback that they feel like it'd be nice to know where things are going, that we approve this, and then we approve this, and it's like all of a sudden you started with something and you approved one thing, but then we had camping, and then they got another building. And so it's more just clarification and understanding what longer-term plans are, you know, what other, besides the fact that you're building this building, like hearing about, oh, are we going to start having camps that weren't there before? That's like new news there. And I think that's what it feels like, is that things kind of just dribble out, and it'd be nice to have more of a long-term picture, like where this new building is, and just to have to take it all into consideration at once rather than just this specific one, because it kind of has a cumulative effect. So I think that, again, just this particular building and everything, it seems like, the building itself, it's like, visually and whatever. And I don't myself, I'm speaking for myself. don't have any issues with it. But again, it's the road and the cumulative effect of, what other changes do they want to make that are going to have an impact on those neighbors that are along. Again, that's just a chain link fence there. And the gravel road, there's no trees. They have trees, but they're on the opposite side of the gravel road. So if there's traffic on that road, it directly impacts the neighbors that are right there. So that's all I have. So we'll see now what else somebody else has to say.
Okay, thank you. Ann, I'm going to ask again. You said that we have a building permit for a shed in close to the northwest corner?
The application is for accessory use in this area here.
And what is the footprint? Do you know what the size of that
Oh,
shed is?
I don't off the top of my head, no.
Will it require a special exception?
No, just a building permit. It's an accessory use. It's just going to be used for storing material.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else who wants to speak? And now I open it up to those opposed to the application, and please provide your name and address and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Marcia Hammond, and I do live on the other side of that chain link fence. And
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes, my name is Marcia Hammond, and I do live on Tamarack Trail. And I live on the other side of that chain link fence, so that is a question. And I'm glad that they did move this building that we had talked about in 2024. And my question, I have a couple of things. I'm going to go quickly as I can. It says that you all approved it, and we had been, of course, not approving it. We were very much opposed to it because it was impacting the entire neighborhood, parking, et cetera. And so when was that approved, and where's the minute for that? Where are the minutes for that? So we can see that it was voted, it was approved, because none of us knew that. And we're not feigning ignorance. And it was like, that's why we thought there would be, again, a good neighbor meeting like we had before. We could ask more informed decisions and questions, or they would be, versus the first time around we were caught off guard. And this time we didn't, as Ken said, we didn't even have the packet until today. So how can we come to you asking you questions? And we're all very bright people. We've made these decisions to build these homes and to live here either permanently or temporarily. And it is going to impact the sale of our homes, without a doubt. And if they utilize that building or that road behind us, and there's no guarantee on who's going to police that, you know what I mean? It's it's a situation where I see that, as the fellow who talked about his involvement, he doesn't know what these campers, Larry, that was a good question. The campers, and we didn't know that they were campers. I know they have some from Taproot, but I didn't know that there were going to be more and more overnights and more. I did go on Taproot on their website. I did notice that they do have a very expensive camp for older campers, and so they either are counselors in training, because I was a camp director in upstate New York, so I know a lot about camping, but big camps. But so those are the kind of things that are we getting into something that if we approve, you all approve it, and we're saying, well, but now we have to back this out. How do we do this without creating even more adversity than there already is? I mean, because there aren't answers that are clear. And what's the proposed budget for this building? Because it seems to me that it's fairly expensive, and you're going to be, putting in sewer and water. That's expensive, and if it's only privately held, do we as landowners get to ask what the budget is? And if it's rented out, is it only as they say, it's only going to be to the members or people, I don't know, whatever organization. So if it's like a church, then that's tax exempt. And so is that money going to go into, then so that money that you receive to rent it, I read that you don't have to, it's tax exempt. I mean, so it'll go back into your nonprofit, the organization of Nature's the Harvest Preserve. Because what is the accountability of this? just a question, because it's, and then you're talking about children. I have a big issue about children being, are they going to be carefully monitored, meaning not hurting our property, someone hurting them? Camp counselors, how is that monitored in one great big room? You know, there's, that made me squeamish when I heard that. Because things happen, things go awry. And when you have you know, I don't want to, I can spell it out for you if you want me to, but I don't want to.
No, that's fine.
And I think the other thing that I ask is this, that if you are going to, you know, it seems to me it's going to be approved, and I do think it's probably a great addition for Harvest Preserve in the standpoint that they have a meeting space bigger than what they currently have. But are there plans to provide mitigation for us as homeowners, since they all sold that property, meaning Doug Paul and the Harvest Preserve, they sold it to Joe Clark. They put up that chain link fence. We willingly, although ask a lot of questions, I didn't live here, so I ask a lot of questions. What's there? We accepted all the covenants that we needed to accept. We did everything that we were supposed to do to make sure that we preserve the land in which our homes are sitting on. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, but we're going to have this, we have this road and we have access to it. And where's the mitigation to, as it's stated, there's a possibility of our properties diminishing in value. And when you say that, it is a flag. If there's a flag, that's right, there's not a certainty. And can we create together more of a certainty by helping through mitigation of landscape, to provide a buffer? You know, I know these things all cost money, but so did our homes. So do, you know, it's important that we maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. I guess, I mean, I could go on, and I don't want to, because I don't want to take up all of your time. But I just wish more thought were given to this, as Kent had mentioned, that if we do this, and now they're going to do this, and then what's next? What is the long-range plan of this property? I would think they might have one. And I would like to have that answered, if we could, before you all say, sure, you know, let's have a plan.
We, as the board, are entrusted and given a certain number of parameters.
Okay.
And some of your concerns, frankly, exceed those. I understand your concern about kids being there and people taking advantage. That's way beyond our scope of review. I mean, we don't want to set anything in action that, you know, would necessarily lead to that. That's beyond our scope of review. Our scope of review is the use allowed in the zoning ordinance, and going through the staff findings for specific criteria and general criteria. Those are the questions that we ask ourselves as we go through this application. Now, I think, I wonder if, to address another of your concerns, and Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, but churches and private assembly uses are in the same category, right?
Yes.
So they aren't necessarily asking to have a church here. They're asking to have a private assembly gathering place here, a private.
Well, they have mentioned church, and so, or is it just because it's a catchphrase of what the actual building is, or is it? And then, you know, and so I know that we don't want to assume anything. We want to have clarity, because I would have loved to have had more clarity with Joe Clark, who developed this land, because if we knew, I would have never moved here. I would have never done what I did, because if they said, sure, they're going to build stuff behind there, they're going to do this, I wouldn't have done that. Because I knew that I didn't need a walkout. I needed a smaller lot. It's just myself. I built a smaller home and a smaller footprint. And so those lots on that side, it wasn't necessarily that they were less money. It just allowed for the house to not have as big a footprint as the ones across the street.
Okay. So I'm looking at the conservation easement and the uses that are allowed in that easement. It says that the grantor who granted the easement is the Harvest Preserve Foundation. Do we know who the foundation is? Does it matter?
I don't know. It's probably another legal entity separate from the ownership.
That's also outside of the scope of what's before us.
Yeah,
The
okay.
board tonight.
Okay. And Harvest Preserve Foundation granted this easement to Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation with specific permitted
Des Moines.
uses, which, looking at the easement, the allowed uses include primitive tent-style camping, placement of buildings, grading and paving of access lanes, provided the plan for new vehicular access lanes address any potential erosion issues. They're not asking for anything that's outside of the allowed uses in the easement, which itself isn't ours to enforce, but, you know, we wanted to know what was allowed in the easement. Our zoning ordinance doesn't require a concept plan unless you're asking for a planned development. And this is not a planned development. It's one tract of land. And it's one tract of land, and it has always been used for an outdoor natural area, and what they're asking to do requires a building permit, and so here we are. I don't think I'm going to be able to answer your questions to your satisfaction, you know, because honestly, some of them just go beyond our purview. Does anybody else on the board have anything to say?
Yes, I want to answer one of your initial concerns by asking the staff, because you stated that you didn't have access to this application packet until today. Was this made available to the public when it was provided to the board on April 3rd?
Yeah, it was available online on Friday.
Okay.
I read it on Friday. Marcia, I
can't hear.
on Marcia, so Marcia probably thought it was today.
Okay. We can't record what you're saying on the transcript, and actually, Paula just brought up a really good point. Some of this we should reserve for our discussion, which will be here with all of you present. So unless you have anything else to add, I think I'd like to hear from anyone else who was here to speak. Is that okay? Yes, thank you.
Can I ask one question? I'm sorry, Marcia. One question, quick question. From your home, can you see the new building that's being constructed?
The new building? No, we'll see that outbuilding that we're talking about, and that is also.
Okay, so-
But it is something that also, like you were talking about, Julie, you know, you keep saying, well, we're only here to do this. No, they also are doing this, and it is this too, even though it's not being asked for special exception. So it is, they are doing, as Kent said,
Yeah.
they're doing this, and then they're doing this, and then what's next? And I know we don't have a crystal, I know, but maybe there is more discussion within that group of Harvest Preserve and their members. I don't know. I'm not I don't know. And that would be nice to know if it'd be good, it's a good idea to know. Then we're not sitting here being as frustrated as we might be. Because then we'd have more clarity.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to come forward? And please write your name and address and speak into the microphone.
My name is Merle McBride, and I live at 1176 Tamarack Trail. Also have another lot that borders the Harvest Preserve fence line that's on the map. On my property, which is about an acre of land, the back quarter acre of both lots is set up as a conservation easement approved by the city. In that conservation easement, there is no ability to build or to in any way put any structure at all or even cut a tree down on that property. So, and we are protecting that easement and we always have. When we bought the property, it was not yet under a conservation easement, I believe, by the Harvest, but it was being talked about that would be set aside. So that was part of our understanding, is that we would have an easement that would be adjoining that easement. And I was surprised to see that the easement was full of exceptions, that they could build roads and put chip seals and whatever they want in terms of sheds and buildings on the property. I think what I would like to see is that the Harvest maintain the primitive status that was there. I can understand them being grandfathered in to use the existing properties and to have small-scale camping events or even public assemblies or whatever, but to go in and expand it to a 147-use church-type facility seems to be a lot, and it seems to be interfering with a lot of the homeowners' ability to enjoy our property when there's going to be that kind of expansion. I have a question for the city people here, is that once this zoning is approved, it's moved from a residential interim or whatever it was to a general assembly such as the church, that remains with the property, correct? I mean, if Harvest was to sell that property next year, it would be zoned still as an assembly, and a church could come in and take that property over. Is that correct?
So if the board approves the religious private group assembly use and it maintains operations continually, it can continue to operate. Once it ceases operations for a year, then it would need a new special exception. If it wanted an addition, it would need a new special exception.
But as long as they keep running it, I mean, they keep using it, they can sell it, and it remains in effect, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just getting into the relevancy of this proposal, the 147 people facility with 25 parking spaces is not adequate. I think you all know that. You're going to have an average of 2 people per car. You're going to need at least, you're going to, need quite a bit more than, probably 75 parking spaces rather than 25. So what that means is, and what Harvest has already done on some of their events, is that they flow cars over to that chip seal road that's on the west side of the property that's right behind several of the neighbors that are in this room. And that becomes a parking lot. If they don't use that, then they move on to Tamarack Trail, because there is no parking on Scott Boulevard. And they've got like I said, the 25 spaces there, they can blow out of that real quick. And they have for some events already. So with the expansion, it's going to become more and more of a problem. Also, I had a question for the city about the sewage. I think the consultant here said something about it would be pumped up to the northwest corner. So it's my understanding that would go into the sewer lines that are in the Tamarack Trail residential area. Is that correct?
I think that might be a question for the applicant's engineer. who can address, yeah, we can address that. Is there anything else, sir? Because we'll make sure that that is addressed
All right.
along with your other concerns.
Also, I think it was in your summary, you said that the facility is not open to the general public. Did you not say that?
I said that.
I believe that's incorrect, because right now you can contact the Harvest Preserve. Anybody doesn't have to be a member, and you can rent their current facility. It's much smaller. I think it only accommodates 50 people or so, but it's open to the public. And I don't think they're cutting back on that. I think this is an expansion. So it is open to the general public.
Our zoning code uses the term generally open to the public to describe the private assembly use.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Our zoning code uses the term generally not allowed. Sorry, what's the term?
General public.
Not allowed to the general public.
Okay.
But yeah, the generally is explaining the use as defined in our zoning
I guess
code.
my point is that it is something that is available for general public use as long as they pay for it. And we don't know who's going to be there necessarily. We're aware of camping right now, and my property, quite often I hear the kids back there at night that are camping. And I support it. I'm all for the Taproot program and the camping. However, it's my understanding, and I think they told us at the public meeting, at the community meeting we had last time, that they're really having trouble with the restroom facilities, and they need to be able to run the full programs they want, the number of camping programs, they need the restroom facility. And so there is going to be expanded camping, it appears to me. And I don't think you can control that with this, but I think that's just another issue that's related to the expansion that will be happening. There will be more camping. There will be noise. It will impact the neighbors in the area. And it's kind of an unregulated thing that, I do think it's relevant. So I guess those were my main points. I would like to, go on record as saying that we would want more information. We'd like to, some of these questions, or maybe get contingencies from the Harvest before it would be granted. And I guess they're not here tonight, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who is here to speak before we get to the project engineer?
I wasn't going to talk. Oh, well. I was really disheartened to hear that there's going to be a storage building built on that.
I'm sorry, can you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine Backens. I live on Tamarack Trail. In my backyard faces the fence, and we have a clear vision of what is being built back there, and I guess you said that's going to be a storage building. It's really disheartening for me to hear that all they need is a building permit to build more things there, and that gravel road or whatever, dirt, it does kick up a lot of dirt existing now, and I agree with what Merle said. I think that area that the applicant was talking about for camping, that road is going to be more accessible to the camping area that they're talking about, and in my experience with walking through Harvest, I believe the new proposed building over by the pond in the bathroom facilities, that's far away from where the campers are going to be. And with as much dark as there is, and I am a camper, I was camping for very many years. And yeah, no, I wouldn't be walking through the woods looking for a place to go potty in the middle of the night with the facilities being so far away. So that's a concern. And the overnights, the camping, campfires. I mean, like I say, I've camped for years and years and years. And so I know how loud they can be. And I'm just concerned about the volume. And that's all. So I'm really sad to hear, because we see the surveyors and we see the building materials and we're like wondering, what are they doing? What are they doing? And now to know it's going to be a storage building and we can, I mean, the fence is ugly enough. I mean, it's like a 10-foot prison fence. The only thing that's not missing is the barbed wire. But then looking at that and then looking at storage buildings, like a pool building, I can only imagine it's probably not going to be very aesthetic. So anyway, that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I turn it over to the yes?
My name's Chad Vanderlinden. I live at 1292 Tamarack Trail. So our house is, the back of our house is adjoining that fence that everyone is talking about with Harvest Preserve. I think I just have a couple of questions for you as the board. I'm just now learning tonight about this shed or storage shed that's being built. Do you, as the board, have jurisdiction on restricting them putting in this storage shed that we're talking about? You mentioned that they just need a building permit, but why would it not be a special exemption to put a storage shed there?
I believe that is addressed in some of the staff notes, if I'm not mistaken. There was an item.
Julie, do you want me to answer the question?
Yes, go ahead, Ann.
So only certain uses require a special exception, like the proposed use, this private group assembly use. But an accessory structure, I mean, you could pull a permit tomorrow for a building as an accessory structure on your property with just a building permit. It's the same here. You just need a building permit. You don't need to go to the Board of Adjustment for approval of a shed.
Okay. I mean, I guess that concerns me a lot because when we purchased this lot, Joe Clark, who sold us the lot, stated many times that there was an easement behind us and that it was preserved in perpetuity was the term that he used. So we were assured that there would be nothing built on the property on Harvest Preserve just adjacent or that adjoins our lot. And so that's, one of the big draws for us in buying that property and building our forever home there. So I guess could you explain what I see that outline there of like a buildable space that adjoins that fence? What is the zoning there and what could be built there in the future by Harvest Preserve?
The entire tract is zoned with one zone, and that is IDRS, Interim Development Single-Family Residential.
But on this proposal, they have an outline there, and it's kind of sectioned off as a buildable area.
That's correct.
Or something like that?
That's correct. So the conservation easement that was drawn up in, I want to say 2022, specified where buildable areas could be. And I don't know how that year merges with your purchase date or the time that you were talking with Mr. Clark. But this was drafted in 2022 and contained those buildable areas.
Yeah, I mean, that's just really disheartening because that we had no idea, and we were told again and again that nothing would be built behind us, that it was going to be a nature preserve, and that was a huge draw point for us for building our house there. So I guess what you're saying is they can build any sort of building there, but if it was a change in use case, then they would need a special exemption. Am I understanding that correctly?
It would be totally dependent on what they were proposing. And so tonight we are discussing
I understand.
the private group assembly use, which requires a special exception.
Okay, yeah, I apologize for being off topic. That was just something that came up tonight, was them building a storage shed there, and that was really disheartening and news to us.
Yeah. To be clear, that our zoning ordinance does allow anything less than 500 square feet that's an accessory use, so a storage building, to be built without a special exception. So that's the parameter.
Okay. And they would
Without a building permit.
Without
Without a building permit.
well, I think
They don't need a special exception for an accessory structure. Oh, are you saying for the,
I'm saying for the shed. I think
I believe a shed
sure
below
I
a
just-
certain size doesn't require a permit. If it's above a certain size, then you need a permit, but it doesn't require any special exception.
Exactly. Building official may grant approval for an accessory storage building less than 500 square feet in size without approval from the Board of Adjustment.
And for this building permit that they're going to use for this shed, does that go before any sort of approval board or no?
No, the building official will review, make sure that it complies with the relevant setbacks from property lines, distances from other structures.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
He can appeal a building. Can he appeal a building?
he has reason.
Anyone else that needs to speak? Yeah, please come up to the microphone.
You guys, that property, that shed or whatever they're calling, it's 2,400 square feet.
I think the 2,400 square feet, is that right?
Gail, our neighbor also
Before
has-
speaking, we would close this portion and then
Okay.
turn to rebuttal by proponents and then opponents for
Okay.
this portion of the discussion.
All right. Thank you,
There'll be a
Alex.
chance to come up and
You'll
speak
get a
during rebuttal.
chance to come up and, yep.
Yeah, you just wanted the size, that's all.
No, it's a procedural thing, that's all. Can I now ask the engineer to come up and address the question about the sewer?
Yes, yeah, you can open for rebuttal from the proponents first and then the opponents. So in this case, the engineer
Okay.
would be the proponent. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Brock Heller, MMS Consultants. Yes, it is the intent to connect to the public sanitary service that's along Tamarack Trail. A portion would need to be extended on Scott Boulevard as the existing line ends on Tamarack Trail.
I think the concern was about both Tamarack Trail properties and this property using the same sanitary line. So will this have a separate connection to the main, or will it feed into a portion of the sanitary that's serving the subdivision?
So the sanitary from this building will be pumped to a location within the public right-of-way that connects to the existing public sanitary service. So there will be added load onto the public sanitary service. As part of the site plan application, the city engineering staff will make sure that the sizing is all adequate and that it wouldn't be extending past what the volume could be handled within the public sanitary sewer.
Thank you.
How big is the tool shed being built?
I don't know.
The shed is also not part of what is before the board tonight. I would just reiterate that because it's not subject to a special exception.
Saying that, there was a statement made about the size. I just wanted to clarify it.
Understood.
I'm not familiar with that building permit.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, that's all. Are there any other responses from the applicant to the public comments that were made? Staff, do you have any additional? Oh,
Christine Backens,
Sorry,
I would like
we're
to-
just going to close out the response from the proponents, and then the chair will call for
okay,
opponents. Sorry.
are there any other comments from staff?
I actually have one thing. I just wanted to note in our recommendation for approval with the conditions, staff is also recommending that the approval period expire after 12 months as opposed to the normal 6 months for special exceptions. That's something for the board also to consider. We are recommending this because what we have seen with approvals for special exceptions, it's often not enough time to get a site plan and building permit. 6 months has not been enough time recently. So we are recommending 12, and the board can consider that.
Okay, thank you, Ann. All right, are there any issues on which the board wants to have more clarity? Any final questions for the staff or the applicant?
Was the opponents?
This would be
have a
the
chance to
opportunity
respond to
for
the-
rebuttal from the opponents.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there a rebuttal from the opponents?
I'm sorry. Christine Backens again, and I would just like, if the applicant knows what the distance is between the restroom facilities and where the campers will be, I would just like to kind of know that.
Marcia Hammond, I do know that there is an existing, on the website, there was a, it cost $50,000 or 2,400 square foot outbuilding, whatever that building is, and so that is there. Would they need more lighting to go if they're camping? And that lighting, where would that be? Because it would be right our back, it's like, it again would interfere with my end, all of us who have, we didn't build our houses to the front, we built our houses to the back. So that's a concern. I talked with a fellow who, his first name is Josh, and he's an engineer, and he worked on the site plan to do the Tamarack Trail Division for sewage and water. He said that at that point, a week ago, he had not heard from anyone in regard to a proposal to tie in to this existing sewage water system. Because that was a big issue that we had 2 years ago because of that, 2024. We just said, no, it needed to be separate, not to tie in. And so how is that, he explained it. I am not an engineer, but I do understand the flow. You're still ending up tying into Tamarack Trail. Correct?
The applicant is nodding.
Yes?
Yes, the applicant is nodding yes.
Okay, so your engineer said to me Monday, no. So I want to know has it been asked? Has it been approved? Has it been?
This has not been approved yet. That's why the engineer does not know this. We have not. We need to. The first step is this meeting to approve the special exception. Then we will move on to the site plan. The site plan will go to Josh, who you spoke with, and at that time he will review it.
Mm-hmm. Well, because you can. Okay. May I suggest maybe there's a better way to do these meetings, because if you'd already had those meetings, then we wouldn't have to come and be disgruntled about certain things, because that sewage was a big deal 2 years ago. And so now we're hearing about it again. And Josh told me on Monday, no, I haven't heard a thing about it. So, and then you're going to approve something that, what? The impact.
Yes. We are looking at a broader.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
It's very important because there's never been clarity with this. Black and white. Black and white. It's clarity.
I can't
Okay.
hear a word she said.
Thank you. She said there's never been clarity.
There's never been clarity, Mark. Yeah, and this is important because we had to have clarity with our lots. We had to have our roof approved, we had the shingles approved, we had the siding approved, we had the slope everything had to be approved.
Right, right. And this will go through a similar, but you didn't need a special exception. It's a different process, is all I can say. And this applicant will have to go through the same scrutiny, provide an amount of sewage capacity based on the occupancy of the building, so we know what needs to be managed, what the volume is,
Right.
and how it will tie in and not overload the system.
Okay.
But we just haven't gotten there yet.
Well, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there isn't anyone else, I'd like to close the public hearing. And the next, okay.
Need a motion to approve?
We need a motion to approve the application materials. This is not a motion to approve the proposal. It is a motion to approve the documents that were submitted to us. Can I get a motion?
I would move that we approve Special Exception EXC 26-0001 to allow a religious private group assembly use in an interim development single-family residential IDRS zone for the property located at 1645 North Scott Boulevard with the approval period expiring after 12 months as opposed to 6, subject to the following conditions. General compliance with the site plan dated 4/8/2026 in terms of the location of the building, parking, and the size and scale of the proposed building. The building housing the religious private group assembly use must be closed between the hours of 10 and 6 a.m., 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. No amplified sound shall be allowed outdoors, and future lighting shall be subject to the standards of 14-5G-3 standards for single-family and two-family uses to ensure compatible lighting designs.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, board discussion?
Well, I think it's important that we remember that regardless of what we determine on this application, it has no effect on that road or the shed or the camping. So therefore, those are not direct bearing on our decision.
I have a question for staff. Is there, it's been, a year and a half since it was approved last? Is there any mechanism available to these people? Is it possible to arrange another Good Neighbors meeting? I mean, to go back over all of this stuff? Apparently there's some surprises or whatever it might be. It seems to me that we don't want to bulldoze, we don't really want to bulldoze anything without making sure that everybody is equally prepared. That's just, is there any mechanism such as that, or is it just, are we locked into a?
Good neighbor meetings are not required. I think if the board thinks a good neighbor meeting needs to be had, they would have to table this discussion and for the next meeting.
Well, I would have felt a lot better if I had more information from the applicant than was available tonight. But we do have a very special focus in this particular application about what we can and cannot approve. I don't recall in the previous discussion when we approved this a year and a half ago that the camping was an issue. I just don't recall that being part of the discussion at all. And it's now my understanding that it's been done already, and evidently to no great detriment. I would like to know, for example, where the camping would be relevant to this new structure. But, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, I just want to say that I certainly understand the frustration of the neighbors. I've been there many times. I've appeared before many boards. I've sat on many boards, and I understand both sides, and I totally understand how you feel about what's being done to that property. But at the same time, what I've learned is that if I don't own it, I can't control it, as long as it meets the criteria in the code. So that's what we need to look at. I understand you live in an HOA, you're governed by an HOA, so you have your own set of rules, and you can't just build a shed on your property without getting that approval. And this group has to get our approval, not for the shed, because that doesn't fall in our purview here, but for this building. And that's what we have to focus on, is just this building, whether they're camping, whether they're using the road for other purposes, that's not part of what we have to decide. So that's just my opinion.
Yes, what we're going to do is go through the staff findings in the report and talk about whether those findings have been met or not. As a matter of our discussion, I do have some concerns about the west drive that is evidently being used for overflow parking. If it is being used for overflow parking, then it's not in a designated parking area, and it's not in a proper parking area. It isn't paved, doesn't have access to a cement driveway. It's not delineated, it's just there. And that's one concern. And that's kind of an enforcement thing more than it is what we have to decide today. I also have a concern about the distance between the camping and emergency shelter and bathrooms. I think the emergency shelter has to do with public health and safety, and access to a bathroom, good access to a bathroom, also has to do with public health. And that is not what we're here to decide right now. Right now, we are looking at a building, as you said. This is the building that we're asked to consider. There are outside considerations that I think also need to be discussed, but I don't think they can be discussed in this forum. Am I right?
That's correct. They're outside the jurisdiction tonight. Tonight is just regarding the specifics of the building that is subject to consideration for a special exception. There are other points in the city consideration process and application process where some of these other concerns would be assessed and addressed.
Is there any interest in the board in deferring, all these questions for another meeting? Do you feel compelled to have more things clarified before you make this decision?
With respect to the findings of staff, which is what we're examining, it's my opinion that the findings have been met, that the items outside of the findings, like the use of that west side for overflow parking, the question of whether providing 25 parking spaces is indeed enough, it meets our code. Based on the occupant load of the building, they're required to provide 25 spaces. They've got 29, technically, with the additional 4 outside of the barn. So they meet the standard.
Oh, I agree with you. I was just asking if there's anybody on the board that was...
Does anyone else feel that we should defer this?
I do not.
No.
I do not either. I think that they have, Mark, you think that we should?
I think we should defer. If I could just say.
Yes.
First off, the applicant sent a representative, but this is a pretty serious matter, and I think that the applicant should have been here as well. That's just my personal opinion. Secondly, I think that a deferment, a short deferment, might allow better communication between the parties and resolve some of the issues that, or some of the doubts or whatever, that I understand that our jurisdiction is, you understand, our jurisdiction is limited and that we could just bulldoze ahead, but I don't see, I have a different view of government. I think we need to solve problems too. So I don't think by forcing our way through, I don't think we've solved any problems, to be honest. So I would prefer to defer.
Do I have a motion to defer
Defer.
this meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have
I'll
a-
second the motion.
Could you state that into the microphone?
Yes.
The motion.
A motion, can I have a motion to defer this meeting to a later time?
I'll make that motion.
Just for the record.
Mark, you've done this before.
Okay. I make the motion, I'd make a motion that we defer this meeting for a month.
Okay, second.
Roll call?
Baker,
No.
Swigert,
No.
Tallman,
No.
Russo,
Yes.
Vandergast.
Oh, wait.
No.
Excuse me, to clarify, we are making a motion on whether or not, you seconded the motion and then you said no.
Yeah.
You're saying no to the
I seconded
application?
the motion.
To the
Get it to a
deferment.
vote.
The motion to defer?
Yeah, the motion to defer.
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry.
Motions need to be in the
No.
This
affirmative.
is our first meeting.
Yeah, this is my first meeting as chair, and I
you.
misunderstood.
So the motion to defer has failed.
Yes. 4-1.
Okay.
I'm sorry to do this, but for the sake of the record, motions do need to exclusively be in the affirmative for this board. So the vote would need to be for the motion to defer or a motion to, let's see. It's also my first meeting. And do you?
I think it's okay. The motion
Okay, it's on the record.
was to defer, and
It
we had
lost.
4 no's, so I think that's okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay.
You want to do the findings of fact now?
Yes, let's,
I think we need another motion. Do we need another motion?
Not for the findings of fact.
Okay.
okay, let's go through the findings of fact then.
Okay. Regarding,
Sorry.
No, you're right.
Okay.
We would need make a motion to approve the special exception and then go into the findings of fact.
Well,
Because
we
did the motion to
we
approve
approved
special
the
exception.
application materials.
I believe the other motion overruled
overrid-
that,
yeah.
so now it needs to be made again.
the motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
to approve the materials.
I move that the board approve the special exception of item EXC 26-001 to allow a religious private group assembly use in an interim development single-family residential IDRS zone for the property located at 1645 North Scott Boulevard with the approval period expiring after 12 months as opposed to 6, subject to the following conditions. General compliance with the site plan dated 4/8/2026 in terms of the location of the building, parking, and the size and scale of the proposed building. The building housing, the religious private group assembly use must be closed between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. No amplified sound shall be allowed outdoors. Future lighting shall be subject to the standards of 14-5G3, standards for single-family and two-family uses to ensure compatible lighting designs.
Second.
We had the discussion.
Yeah, we did.
We tried to defer and did not. So is it time, somebody needs to do the finding of facts now.
Okay. The setbacks, as,
No, it's regarding item
Regarding-
EXC, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Regarding EXC 26-0001, a special exception to allow a religious private group assembly use in an interim development, single-family residential zone located at 1645 North Scott Boulevard. I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of April 8th, 2026, and conclude that the general and specific standards are satisfied. Unless amended or opposed by another board member, I recommend that the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this application.
Second. Does it require a second?
I think so. That's okay.
okay, I'm asking for a vote.
I guess any more discussion?
Oh, any
before the
more
vote?
discussion?
Okay,
Okay, vote, roll call?
okay. Swigert,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Russo,
No.
Vandergast,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is declared approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after this decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Okay, moving on to consideration of last month's meeting notes.
I move we approve the minutes from the last meeting
Second.
as read.
Okay, meeting notes are approved.
Do we need
Okay.
to vote to approve them?
A simple vote is all those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. I declare this meeting over. I'm sorry.
Nice
I
job.
need- I needed two cheat sheets, not just one.
You sound very biblical. I declare.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
first meeting, John.